Selfies for everybody.
Selfies for everybody. So couple selfies.
Oh, yeah.
So couple-ies.
Uswees.
Ussies. But, you know, I wasn't able to see what was going on, but I knew that in having those issues, you were smoothing out and glossing over positions, meaning that really good movement controlled in a sense where you're lifting, because lifting is just movement exaggerated. Everything that you do in a normal everyday life or in a sport life at high speeds is done in such small, quick ways. But when you put a load on, you need to do everything exaggerated. You need to exaggerate every position, and your transitions need to be exaggerated to brace that, such that you become strong in these exaggerated ways so that you can perform everything else within those exaggerations safely, and you can become very resilient. So essentially you're creating a buffer, but you were missing positions. So you weren't hitting a good position one with the knees cracked out, but really moving from the knees and not the hips. So you would try and move from your knees and your hips would break. So there was no ability to externally rotate at the hips and keep your butt pressing forward.
Like to the naked eye, or for what I was seeing in the mirror, it looked fine. Right,
because you were tilting the hips up and back instead of staying locked in the glutes and pushing your hips back. So there were breaks happening where you weren't hitting a solid position one, and then so you were missing that. So if you were missing position one, you definitely couldn't hit position two and drop into position three. So the deadlift is a 3-position movement. The squat is you need to hit position one, and then you vertically drop your butt down between your heels. But the biggest mistakes I'm seeing is that people, when they get this initial burst because they're able to master the movement and glide through it and start to get smooth, but they don't have the ability to hit positions along the way. So you need to hit your position, and you need to make a big deal.
I think you're mimicking. So you do, like, if somebody does that well, it's so subtle. You don't even see it. So you're mimicking that movement. You're not truly breaking it down, and you need a trainer, a coach, someone who can watch you and see those small movements.
Right, like you can't learn how to break apart the sprint by watching Usain Bolt, because he's so fluid and graceful and beautiful in his strides that if you're not fluid and graceful and beautiful, there's a lot that goes into that. But essentially, just in a real overall sense, when you lift, you need to spend a long amount of time hitting positions and then transitioning to the next position, but making sure you make what I say, like today, like you have to make a big deal. Make a big deal out of position one. Like, this is a big deal. Then transition into position two and hold it. Make a big deal out of it. Then into three and hold it. Make a big deal out of it. So you weren't hitting all the positions. So there were some structural things there that we've cleared up, and we're moving you back up through positions. In terms of the inner glute specifically, a lot of your training just coming from a desk jockey, as a desk jockey.
It was a desk jockey job.
In corporate America as a marketer, just getting you to extension. So fully, hips driving forward was an accomplishment, but that develops the mid butt and the outer under butt. Then doing a lot of, let's say, low back work will hit the low back into the upper glute. And we hit all that to stabilize you, to get you healthy, right? It was all about that health. It was all about getting strong. It was all about making that progress.
Right.
Because we had a long way to go, and you were so quad dominant, and your hamstrings were completely shut off, and your glutes were unreachable. You would go to do a glute bridge, and your quads would get sore. So, there were some major neurologic disconnects there that we had to repattern. And we also had to teach you to absorb force. There was a lot to go through. But now when we're looking at the inner glute, you need to go not just to fully standing, so at the top of a deadlift, the top of a squat, when you come to a stop, you now need to go into extension in the legs beyond that of neutral. And that's with the hamstrings. So not a hyperextension with the back where you're arching or leaning back, but driving back like you're sprinting. Mm-hmm. So driving back behind the body and turning the knee and the foot in so that you're striking with the big toe. So the best way to get the inner glute is sprints. So if you're going to look at the sprinters, because the sprinters always have amazing butts. Pole vaulters, sprinters, because explosive work, but explosive driving back, with the hips driving forward and the foot driving back. So for those who are not comfortable doing explosive work or sprinting, how can we also develop that, right? Because that's a good question. Mimicking that pattern, so standing upright, even with a cable machine, and putting a let's say like a cuff around your foot, and bringing your leg and having the cable in front of you and driving your knee up, and then driving your foot down and back behind your body, keeping that foot flexed and really squeezing your hips forward. Because if you let your hips break, if you look at the straight line with a broken hip and a lean forward torso, it looks like you're standing. Because everything's still in line, just lean forward. So you have to be upright with the torso, driving forward with the glutes, pinching like a walnut between your butt cheeks, and you need to be driving down and back. But the last key to that, and where people might do this exercise, but where it's not what you do, it's how you do it, right? So they'll let the back foot open. And
like turn out.
Yeah, like a ballet dancer.
Right.
You'll turn the knee outward and the foot will float out. And really the knee needs to be turned slightly internally and the foot needs to be internally rotated, because when you're in full extension or behind the body, the stable position is internally rotated, turned in. You don't want to run like a duck, right, with the legs turned out. That's kind of obvious, right? But so when you squat, you want your knees externally rotating, because you're flexing the hip. But when you're driving down and back like sprinting, you want them pointed in. And then the other movement, which we actually did today, if you check out, I think your Facebook, we're going to be posting more of the full video.
Yeah.
We'll do.
I have a little, real short video on Instagram, but I was going to do the fuller video on
Facebook. But you did like an explosive step up, but not leaving the box. Instead, driving that back leg forward into a wall. So not driving the knee into the wall, so don't get me wrong. Bringing your box close to, let's say, a pole or a wall, some object close enough where you're not really worried about stepping upward and balancing on that leg, but driving up and forward to the point where you actually have to push into a wall and then push back into the wall as you drive your glutes forward. So it's really mimicking that sprint pattern, but without the without the sprinting, right? Without having to take the ballistic, right? The explosive shot of force. So without having to do ballistic work, you can drive through that leg, driving forward almost into that wall, and really catching yourself and driving under that glute and really emphasizing the inner butt. So it's really working behind the hip.
Right. And like working in these alternate movements.
Right.
I mean, you can't like just think a machine's going to be the answer. So.
Right. And the reason it's lagged behind is because you weren't really healthy enough and strong enough to even and coordinated enough to advance your sprinting to a point where you could explosively extend the back leg.
Also, too, weather.
Right, in New Jersey.
Weather in New Jersey. And then even, I guess, the summer here in Austin. I mean, you're sort of a little at the mercy of what the weather's going to bring. So that sort of limits the frequency of your practice.
Right. And so I think that's it's that longer than you think, because I can't push you too fast into sprint if you can't even control the mechanics of your hips, your knees, with a tight back and an organized spine and torso. If you can't organize your body, then I'm not going to put you under that type of explosive load.
Right, so you need to know your own limits and what you're capable of. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think the hardest thing is when people are on this timetable, or what they think is a timetable for where they need to get to. And I guess for me, I never had a specific timetable, and I think that has also helped me sort of develop a real passion for all of this, because I'm not working towards a specific a wedding I'm going to go to, and then it's sort of like off my radar.
Right, and then you're rushing. Really, the biggest when you have that timetable, I see people butcher movement. Like they rush
movement,
through.
You cut too many calories. You're just trying to make too much happen too fast. You're trying to cut corners.
And I think that what I love about CrossFit's the community, and what I love about CrossFit's a company, and it's really a community, and it's a it's a group of people who I wholeheartedly support. But I think when people go into it, they don't really take it upon themselves to master movement, to make themselves the master of each step along the way before they ramp up intensity in it. Like they're ramping their intensity so high that they really are at so much risk because they really haven't mastered anything, and they take a lot of damage, and if you slowed it down, like high metabolic conditioning with loads and skills are really for someone who's advanced.
Also, you have to be smart about CrossFit. I think I think that there's a great benefit in people supporting each other, but I think whenever you're in a group environment like that, there's a tendency for certain personalities to push themselves too far because they're competitive. Yeah. They might push themselves past their comfort zone because, people are watching them and pushing them, and they want to do well, but they really need to dial it back.
Right. And unagi. I mean, that's me. I mean, let's be honest. I am that person because I will go and I will push it to the limit. And for me, that's really I'm not really well when I do that. I'm not balanced. I'm not like a good person. So that's just my personality. I don't need to be pushed. I have enough of that.
And I think that's the danger in those group settings for people with a personality like yours. You go a little too hard when you really need to dial it back.
Right. Well, this has been a very interesting show, and we didn't get to any of those
we started,
questions.
But we didn't get to many questions. That's okay. We'll be back, and we'll answer more on future shows.
Yes. Well, I really want to get you on in the next couple of days to answer these, because I think these would really help women. Would you be willing to come back?
Well, since you asked so nicely, I guess I could.
Because you have a lot of stuff on, muffin top and, deposit of belly fat versus
plateaus,
fat in the thighs and the lower back, and
travel.
Right. How to deal with travel. Hitting plateaus, snacks, pre and post workout. I mean, people are just hitting you up for knowledge, and
all right, you talked me into it. I will come back.
You're leaving them hanging. and I feel
exciting. A cliffhanger is exciting.
I feel responsible to the Bikini Nation to have you back on so you can answer these things.
All right then.
All right. Well, where can people find you?
You can find me on my blog, which is thebikiniexperiment.com, and that'll hook you up with any of my social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as The Bikini Experiment, and I'm on Twitter as BikiniEXP.
Awesome. Guys, reach out to her. You'll just, especially if you're a woman, I mean, it's so much more about a quick fix. I love how her concept revolves around this training, everything that she's really learned from me in terms of real training that is really not being told to women, that women are being sold unfortunately a training lie, but then her eating is all about the way we eat, which is so about removing those chemicals and, decreasing stress in your life. That's a huge part of storing belly fat, which we'll talk about. And then, when we answer that question about how improving your sleep can decrease your belly fat. And then beauty products. I mean, she's the queen of beauty products, and actually
I love beauty products.
How you got started in this, and organic and toxin-free products. But you can hit me up at CoachScottFrost.com, and I am Coach Scott Frost with 2 T's for everything. My mother named me that way, so I have 2 T's. You can hit me up in YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am just going off
you have great stuff on YouTube. I love your videos.
Thanks. On demos and just how to perform stuff. It's just such an amazing free resource for you to learn how to take care of yourself, because your goal, if you're training with anybody, if your trainer makes you feel like they want to keep you, you might want to find a different trainer, because their goal should be to empower you to a point where you don't need to train with them. And